Hello, I'm David Zvisland, and today's presentation is on Civil 3D, and I'm calling today's session Field to Office, and we're going to focus mainly on the survey tool space and the Trimble link application in Civil 3D. I'm going to start off with a quick question for you folks here. And what I'd like you to do is just answer yes or no. I have used the Trimble Link program in Land Desktop 2007, so I can get kind of an idea of what my audience is and what our experience is with this software. All right, I'm closing the poll, and we'll go ahead and show you that. So right now we see about a little more than half of you are using the Trimble Link program, which is good because I advertised this session in an effort to get their attendance at this presentation. I am recording today's session, so if any of your cohorts in your office or in the other offices need to see this presentation, it will be available in the webinar archive. Let me go ahead and turn that off. So I just kind of got a feel for what we're going to be seeing today. Let me jump over and go through my obligatory PowerPoint presentation here. I'm going to start off with just some basic objectives. And what I'd like to do today, combined with the session I did a couple weeks ago on points and description keys, I'd really like to make sure that the surveyors at Nolte are comfortable enough with Civil 3D that they can use the Trimble link function. And that's really the main objective of today's session, is to be able to use the Trimble link to download field data from our data collectors, generate a fieldbook file, and then be able to bring that file into Civil 3D. Initially, the workflow that we envision is not only will we work on this in Civil 3D, but most of the offices are still using Land Desktop as the predominant design and production tool. We will then need to take this fieldbook file back over to our Land Desktop 2009. Main reason I'm doing this session also is we're going to find, as we have upgraded to 2009, that Trimble link is not available in Land Desktop 2009. The folks at Trimble only wrote a program for Civil 3D, so we're kind of having to modify our workflow a little bit with this. So, and since I am trying to cancel and get rid of our 2007, thought we should have this session in time to get you ready for that. The topics I'm going to cover today to meet those objectives is we're going to look at the survey database in Civil 3D, and we'll introduce you to that concept, show you how to create a database and survey networks within that database. We're going to review a little bit the survey command language and survey commands, because those are what are used in the fieldbook files, and what we're going to see, hopefully those of you who are familiar with this, is that it is identical to Land Desktop. We're going to then import our field data, which is a one-button push on the Trimble link pull-down menu. It's kind of hard to mess that one up, but we'll bring in the data, add it to our survey database into a network, and then we will show how to view and edit the fieldbook. And then if I have time today, we will look just briefly at the figure commands in our fieldbook file and the figures in Civil 3D. Not really a high priority for me to get you to be able to do this stuff in Civil 3D. The main goal is to be able to import the data and generate the fieldbook file. All right. The process we're going to look at. And I apologize to the folks in Salt Lake because I know this does not show up on your projector. We've learned that a while ago. To be honest with you, this doesn't even show up on my monitor. It's pretty small here. What I'm trying to do for all of the Civil 3D training sessions to help me work out the training materials is I build flow charts of what the processes are. So this is what I've come up with for the survey field to office of importing data, editing data, and then ultimately building a surface model, which is the bottom half of this flow chart. What I'm going to be looking at in today's session is this region in the upper left corner of this flow chart. And before I get too much further, for those of you who'd like to look at these on your own, let me jump over to the CAD support site, and what you can do is select the CAD training category, the Civil 3D subcategory, and search on Field to Office. And there's two documents that will hopefully rise to the top of the list. One is a workflow document called Survey Field to Office, and that actually has all of the flow charts that I'm developing for the different functions within Civil 3D or the different processes. The other one is the handout for the Survey Field to Office training, which is what I'm actually using for today's presentation. So some of the steps I do today, you can go and look in this handout and follow through that on your own. The data sets for these can also be downloaded from the CAD forum website. If you go to the shared documents, there's a Civil 3D training folder. Locate the Survey Field to Office class, and there will be a zip version of that file. But just kind of want to make you aware that this information is available outside of the webinar here. All right, so let me jump back into my presentation. So I'm going to work on this portion of the flow chart. So hopefully this will show up on the overhead projectors for those of you who are watching this in the conference room. The process we're going to look at is we're going to start off on these three boxes here, and we'll do basically a brand new drawing, look at our drawing settings, make sure it's correct. I have created a Field to Office template drawing, and the I indicates it's imperial, so right now it's only in feet and inches. We don't have a metric one just yet for the Mexico offices, but that's something we are working on. But this will have all of the Nolte layers, all of the Nolte styles. In addition, for bringing point data in, it will also have all the point styles and the description key set so that our points get sorted to the right layer. So it's real critical that when you create a drawing for bringing in any kind of point data or field data, we start with that FTO_I template drawing. We'll take a brief look at our units and settings, and then we'll also look at the description keys just briefly because we covered that in the session I did earlier this month. Also, to set up before we bring in our field book, we will touch just briefly on the figure prefix database, which is very similar to what we had in Land Desktop for bringing in figures. It controls what layer they are drawn on, but we'll see that there is some additional functionality in Civil 3D with that. All right, then we'll come into this main column here, kind of the meat of the process, and we'll have to create initially or open up a survey database. Right now my project doesn't have one, so we're actually going to create a survey database. We'll then look at our database settings, and then once we get in our database, we will create, get my mouse button here, we will create a new network, and I can create multiple networks within my database, and there's kind of some workflow issues here that I'm not 100% clear on, so we'll kind of have to evolve this process as we get more people working with Civil 3D to bring in this data. So, you know, do we do everything in a single network on a job, or does each data download require its own network? So I'm a little fuzzy on that process just yet, but it is very flexible in how we do that. So once we've got our network, we can at some point hopefully have our data collected, and then we come over here and we can use Trimble Link to import or download our job file. From that, we can then generate a fieldbook file which gets imported, and one of the things we're going to see is the Trimble Link import job command actually does the create network, download, and import the fieldbook, does this whole region here in a single button push. But I'll also show you where we can get to the commands to edit our fieldbook file and then come down here and then re-import. So I'm going to get my mouse to point again, re-import that fieldbook file, and then when we finish up, we'll verify our points and figures, and if we need to make changes, we'll cycle back through the process here. So you can see I got a little loop back. The rest of the flowchart, which I've cut off, goes into surface modeling with this data, and I don't have enough time to get into that this afternoon. All right, so that's kind of an overview of the process I'm going to be looking at. Let me kind of pick on here and get into the next image. What we're going to look at now is a new concept for people coming from Land Desktop. We're going to look at what's called the survey database, and synonymous to this in Land Desktop would be the observation database, which we really had no means of editing except for some of the survey tool space functionality in the later versions of Land Desktop. And they've really copied that from Civil 3D and applied it to Land Desktop. So if you use some of that in Land Desktop, hopefully this is not too foreign to you. You'll have an idea of what's going on here. What is the survey database is accessible through the Survey tab on the tool space. So we'll see if we can add in a Survey tab. And the database, I hope if I keep up with this, is stored in our Civil 3D folder of a standard Nolte project. This is set up when you use the Catapult or Cadillac programs to launch Civil 3D. It will set this folder or this working folder path very similar to how we have Land Desktop setting the Sofdesk folder for each project. So that way we don't put all of our data in a single location. We still want to organize it by job number on the server. So you do need to use Cadillac or Catapult to launch your Civil 3D so that we are assured that we're working with the working folder in the correct location. And this is where our databases will be created. All right. The survey database itself contains three main pieces of data. It's going to contain the survey network, and the network, getting a little more detail, it contains all of our control point data, our observation data, so all of our setups and turned angles, or if it's just NEZ data, we would have non-control point data also stored in that. But basically, it's all the data imported from the field book gets stored in the network, and you can actually edit and modify some of the observations in the network. You can change, say, the coordinates, excuse me, of your control point, update the network, and then all of the data tied to that network will also update. I don't have enough time today to go into any more detail on this. I plan on having future sessions where we will talk in greater detail on editing survey databases, editing networks. Okay. Other items we'll see in here is all of our figures get stored in here, and then the final item is we'll actually have survey points stored in the survey database. This is kind of close to the point database in Land Desktop, with the exception is you'll see is each database, and then within each database, each network can have its own list of survey points. And then we have tools that allow us to import these directly into our drawing. We can bring the figures into our drawing and as well as the points. If we do any edits, we can then also have that data updated in our drawing. So this kind of becomes the tool by which we can manage our point data and get it into multiple drawings. And if you attended the session a couple of weeks ago on points, we saw that all the point data was created in the drawing file we were working in, and there was no way to share those points with any other drawing files. Well, the survey database becomes a way that we could possibly do that. All right, well, I'm going to jump over now, and we're going to create a drawing here. So let me find my Cadillac application. And I've already gone to the folder I want to work in, and we're going to start the process off. I'm actually creating a new drawing file, and I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of and is using this FTO template here. And you'll see there's quite a few templates I've developed with all of the corresponding Nolte styles based on what function that you want to perform in that drawing. All right, so field to office, we're going to start with that, and again, that has all the points, point styles, and description keys for importing our field data. File name, I'm just going to use FTO for field to office, and then maybe today's date, 2010-02-24, I think. And I could put in maybe what job this is or whatever, but for now that's fine, and I'll go ahead and create that file. So bear with me a sec as my Civil 3D launches off. So maybe what we'll do is, while we're waiting for that, I'm going to do another poll here to see who's paying attention. So when we use the Catapult or Cadillac application, it sets the survey working folder to which directory. So I'll let you guys vote on that, see who is paying attention while my drawing opens up here. And you guys are a little slow here. Again, this is for Civil 3D. When we open a drawing in the Civil 3D profile, what folder is set to the working folder for our survey databases? All right, that's about everybody's going to vote. Let's close that, and we'll share the results. Most of you got it right. There's a couple wrong answers. Again, it sets it to the job number Civil 3D folder. So we're trying to keep it very similar to what we had for Land Desktop. Land Desktop put all the data in that Sofdesk folder. Civil 3D, we're trying to make it so all of the Civil 3D external data files goes to that Civil 3D folder, and we'll look at that in just a little bit. And there's actually two pieces of data we're putting there. We're putting our survey databases, and that's also where we're putting in our data shortcuts are being stored in that location as well. All right, so let me come back. So I've got my Civil 3D opened up here. Let me close down. Oop, don't need the map tools here. So we'll see now in our tool space, we've got the two typical tabs. I've got Prospector and I've got Settings. To get the Survey tab, I'm going to come over to the Survey pull down, and at the very top here is the commands to open and close the Survey tool space. So let me go ahead and open Survey tool space, and that will add that tab in over to our Civil 3D tool space window now. So we have those three tabs. Once you've opened it, it should stay there for multiple sessions or continual sessions unless you ever restore your profile, or if I reset some of the workspaces, that'll go away. All right, three things in here. We have our survey databases, and you'll see for this job I don't have any right now. You then have an equipment database, which has settings for any kind of total station equipment that we could then use to apply any kind of adjustments. If you're doing any of the traverse or data adjustment routines, you can include the equipment information into that, so you can correct for some of the prism constants and other offset values for your equipment. The other file here is our figure prefix database, and I'll go ahead and address that since we're here. And this is actually an external file, and it has all of our figure prefixes that we're used to seeing in Land Desktop. So everything that you've coded in Land Desktop will work just the same in Civil 3D. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my editor here, and of course that's over on my other monitor. Let me bring that back over here. There we go. So there's our figure prefix. Unlike Land Desktop, this does more than just assign it to a layer. So you can see I do have a layer column here, and it's applying them to the appropriate layers. We can then apply our Standards Manager layer update, and we'll get the correct colors and line types for our objects that we bring in. But we can also predefine which figures are going to be used for break lines. So you can see in our default database, I've tried to pre-check all of the objects that are typically a grade break in a surface model, and I've tried to leave cleared anything that is typically not used as a grade break. And you can come and modify these on a a project by project basis here as you're working on this. The other field in this table that I'm just going to point out that we're not going to use today is I can also create parcels automatically from figures. So if you do a closed figure or a series of figures that define a closed area, we can actually have it automatically include those as parcel segments and define parcels in a parcel database. All right. If you do that, you need to also specify over here what site to create those databases or those parcels in. So I right now have a default one just called Survey Site. That's the default, but we can go through and as we work through some of these workflows, maybe come up with something a little different. Okay. We also have a style that gets applied to figures, and right now I'm just using a style called Standard, and it basically is set up so that any layer, line type, and color properties that the figure is created on will be displayed on the figure. So by using the standard one, if they go on a layer that's blue, the figure will be blue. If they go on a layer that's red, the figure will be red. All right, so that's our figure prefix. Let me go ahead and close that down. All right. Items I want to talk about here, well, I'm not ready really. Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll make a database here. Let me kind of think of where I want to go here. Let's start off. I'm going to click on this little button up here. This brings up our survey user settings, and these are kind of the default settings for the survey tool space. A couple of things that we set here is what editor do you want to use. Default is Notepad, but if you want to use some of the more advanced editors that are available, you can use those like Ultra Edit or whatever. We can set that up. And then where is the survey tool space looking for the default files? So we actually have a database settings that you can create and save. So whenever you create new databases, you don't have to hit 20 or 30 toggles again. You just import your database settings. Extended properties is a way to add additional data to points beyond point number, northing, easting, elevation, and description. We can actually have some custom data fields, and we've done this on a project in Salt Lake where they had a couple of different description fields, and we're able then to create what are called extended property definitions. Here's our equipment database. Again, you'll see most of these are coming from the Civil 3D 2009 survey folder. Same thing, our figure prefix database. We're using the Nolte figure prefix file, which is stored in that same location. Interactive graphics, this is when we import our field books. You want to see the little transits and prisms jumping around on the screen. We can turn that on and off and control what colors are used. Some of our import defaults, again, we can control whether or not those graphics are in there. Most of these import defaults, you also get asked these when you import your fieldbook files. So don't worry about having to have these set here, but you do want to have these as close to your defaults as you want. That way you don't have to keep toggling them every time you import. And we'll talk about these when I go to import my fieldbook file. We're not doing any exporting. Network preview, we're going to see that there is a network object that gets created, and we can have that preview. Right now I'm going to have it just display point data when I do the previews, and the preview itself will actually show up down here at the bottom of the survey task pane here. And then the last one here, figure previews. Yes, when I click on a figure, I want to see a preview of that as well. So this kind of controls the behavior of our survey tool space. Let me go ahead and click OK to that. So what I'm going to do is come up here. Let me clean this up just a little bit. I'm going to make a new database. So like everything that we've seen so far in Civil 3D, you right-click on it, you get a menu. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to create a new local survey database. And I'm just call it temp, and I don't know, this is going to be survey command is what we're going to look at here. So I'll pick OK to that. It will then create that database, and just to kind of reinforce that location, let me come into Windows Explorer here, and I'm going to pick on the Civil 3D folder, and you'll see there is my new survey database. So it'll create a directory with the same name that corresponds to what we created over here in the tool space. In that folder, you're going to get a series of files. The main thing is this SDB file, which is the actual survey database. Not a whole lot you can edit on this. It is an Access database, so you could make a copy of it, change it to an MDB file, and open it up with Access, but I really don't see a need to do that. And then it has several lock files and other. This SDX file just helps keep track of the settings for this database. So not a whole lot you need to be editing here, but just kind of make that aware. If you need to get rid of a database, you have to do it through Windows Explorer. You have to come in here, right-click, and you can delete it through Windows Explorer. There are not any commands or functions in Civil 3D to delete a database. Okay, you'll see there is no command here to delete it. I can close it. All right. It'll also close if I open a second survey database, so I can only have one open at a time. All right. For the database, there's a couple of commands here. I've got my database selected. I right-clicked. If we go into properties, we'll see there are no properties to set for a database. So I'm not sure why they have that there, but that was darned exciting. I have settings for the database. Let me take a look at those. And again, these are very similar to some of the settings that we saw previously, but this now gets into a little bit more detail specifically for the database. And a couple of things that you can do with this, I'm not going to do them today because I don't have the time, but what you can do is you can actually assign grid coordinate or a coordinate system to your database, and then as you import that into drawings with a different projection, it'll actually translate the data to that other projection. So I could be working in survey data that was in imperial units, US foot, imported into a drawing that was metric, and it would actually convert or create COGO points at the converted coordinate locations. And through our drawing setup, we can also add in some grid-to-ground scale factors so we can actually bring data in and get it to display at our ground coordinates, or I can say no datum, no projection. Well, if I go no datum, no projection here, I'm kind of stuck in that it won't convert. but we can set that up here. Right now I'm just assuming my data that I have today is ground coordinates. There is no coordinate system, and it's an assumed coordinate system, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that on no datum, no projection. We can set what unit to use. If we're converting from feet to meters, we either need to be US foot or international. What we want for angles, our directions are going to be bearings, temperature, and pressure if we're doing any kind of adjustments. Here's our display precisions for all of our coordinate values and distance values. Default measurement types. Okay, and this is going to be more for when I do the survey command language. This isn't going to have any effect when we bring in data from our data collector. All right. Any kind of adjustments or measurement corrections when we do any least squares or traverse adjustments, we can apply those. Our default settings for the adjustments, and we'll go ahead and kind of skip through those. And then any kind of error tolerances that we can have it check. If I've got multiple points coming in, I can say, check if they're within this distance, let me know, and it will alert me. Typically we don't do that. Usually we don't do check shots with the same point numbers. We usually use different point numbers, and then there will be no tolerance checking on that. That's only if we use the same point numbers repeatedly in our field book file when we import it. All right, so I'll pick OK to that. Didn't really change a whole lot there. Actually, let me go back into that. One of the things you can do, let me apologize for jumping in and out here. If you've set these exactly how you like it, you've made some modifications to this, you can save this to a settings file, and I've got some default ones here. You can save this, and then what you can do is on your next database, instead of having to go through and set all of these again, I can come here and I can import the settings from a file. So I can say, well, grab my training settings, and then it will set these to my default values that I have. So I don't have to remember every time what do I like or what do I need. We can import and export those settings. All right, so coming back into here, so we looked at our survey database. Extended properties, again, is if I want to have additional data on my points besides point number, northern eastern elevation description. Translate survey database is exactly what it says. I can change my XY base or northern eastern base coordinates and actually move my database. Closes it. I can create figures from polylines in my drawing, and then we can import LandXML files from other survey applications. All right, coming in here, I'm going to make a new network now, and we'll just call it just so I have a name on there, and we can give this a description. That'll add in, and then we'll see as we get into a network now, I have all my different data types in the network. So I do have to have a control point, so I can then do a setup on the control point. I can have the observation data. We can have non-control points, which are points that we set by northern easting, but we don't use them for control. I can mainly get that to pull points in from my drawing file. I can add them to my survey database, and then I can go to other drawings, and I can then insert those into other drawings. So it's kind of a way we can kind of cheat and create a COGO point database, but we do it through the survey commands here. All right. Right-clicking on this, again, we have properties for that, and the only thing for properties on our network is the name and description. And then we come in and we can edit our data entry. Okay, and we'll bring up, see there's nothing to edit here, so pretty limited on that. But what I want to show is the old survey command window from the old DCA, Softdesk, AdCAD, and Land Desktop days is still available, and we can actually do manual data entry. And just to kind of show you just briefly, for those of you who have not done any field books with Land Desktop, this is the same language that gets used by the field book file. And the main command you need to know is this one here called help. And I apologize for being on the other screen. And what this will do is this will bring up a text file that lists all of the survey commands and their syntax or format on how to use these. Again, I point this out because this is the exact same commands that are used in our field book file. So if you want to use Trimble Link to import data and generate a field book, we need to know what these commands are. All right, so I'll just do a couple real quickly here. I need some control points, so I'm going to just do an NEZ of point number 1. We'll set it at 5,000 and 5,000, and I'll give it a height of 1,000, and I'll just call it TA1. and then I'll hit enter, and it will actually add that to my data file. And there's my point, so I am getting a little bit of information here. I'm going to need a backside, so I'm just going to do it with an angle. So I'm type in AZ. I'm going to do an azimuth from 1 to 2 of 0 degrees. And then I will, let's go ahead and set our station up now on point number 1 with an equipment height of 5.22 feet. And just use the same name again. And then we'll backsite point 2. So now you'll see on my screen I'm getting those interactive graphics where I can now, so there's my station, I've got my angle set, I got my backsite set, and what I could do is I'll throw in a point here. I'll do an ADVA, which is an angle distance with a vertical angle, and I'll say let's go to point number 3, and we're going to go, bear with me, 85. I got these written down. 18 minutes and 19 seconds is my turned angle. We're going to go, I'll just go 300 feet. And my vertical angle is close to horizontal. I'll do 89 degrees, 55 minutes and 3 seconds. And we'll call this a WTFH. Okay, so it'll throw that one in. There's a point. That's enough for now. Just to kind of give you guys an idea of how this works. As we look at our fieldbook files, you're going to see very similar series of commands entered in here. A couple of benefits about using this is Civil 3D and Land Desktop create what's called a batch file, and I can actually edit this batch file, so if I made any typographical errors, I can come in here, edit these values, change things. You know, maybe that wasn't supposed to be a fire hydrant, maybe that was supposed to be a valve, and we'll save that. Yes, so we can see we've got a fire hydrant here, but let me come back in and run through and reprocess that, and you'll see I now have a water valve, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that, so I can quickly fix any changes. And I actually use this if I have a real long legal description of a boundary. I will draw my figure using the Kogo commands in the survey command language, because that way I can go edit the batch file, edit anything, and then re-import the batch file to redraw my boundary. All right, so there's the 2 points I created. Let me come in here and update my network just to make sure that's all correct. And what we'll see is there's my control point, and I can come in and I can edit my control point. And really the only thing I can change on the control point is the northing easting elevation and description. So if I change this point, all of the data tied to that point will then also update if I come in here and tell it, right there, sorry, and I tell it to update my network. All right. I did define that direction, so we can come in here, we can edit that value. So we can see as I can change the direction value, maybe I had the wrong plate angle, base plate angle on my data, on my total station. I can change that, or I can switch it over to a bearing-based direction. And then we'll have our setup, so we can see we've got the one setup here. I can edit the setup, which I just change my backside instrument height. Okay, and I never did set my prism height. Oops. So my elevations are going to be a little messed up. I ran through it. But I can also edit the observation. So we'll come in here, we'll see there's the point I shot. I can change any of the observation data by clicking on the different values. Maybe I had the wrong distance in here. So I can actually come in and make these edits to my data. I cannot change on observation data. I cannot change the northing and easting values. If I try to pick on these, nothing happens. These are calculated values. All right, so kind of just giving you just kind of a quick tour here through the database. All right, so let me do this. Next step here is I'm going to jump back into my PowerPoint here. All right, we've just went through the survey command window here, and we saw it's good for doing manual data entry. We're going to see that this is the exact same language that's used in our fieldbook file, and the command I showed you, the one that you need to remember for this is the help command. All right, and I also showed you the batch file, and I apologize for doing the PowerPoint after the fact. All right, so I'm ready now. I've got enough of this set up. We're going to look at the Trimble link commands to bring in our field data. We're going to use it to create and edit a fieldbook file. We'll run through that process. And then again, I just want to reinforce that this is compatible with the Land Desktop software. So once we've generated our fieldbook file, we can import that into Land Desktop. I'm going to take a break a sec. I'm going to ask you another questions here. So we've gone through and we just looked at a real simple little survey database, and I want you to now select all that apply. Tell me which objects or which data elements are in a survey database. So go ahead and I'll let you guys click on those, and we'll wait another minute or two here for everybody to click. I know those of you in the conference room are arguing over this right now, so hopefully you can come to some consensus. Almost there. I just think you guys can't click fast enough is the problem here. I'm going to say that's enough. I got about everybody, and then we'll go ahead and share that with you. Pretty darn close. I think not everybody had a chance to pick all the buttons, but really all three of these are applicable. The network observation data is the control points, the angle values, and the observation data, the stations and the edit observations is all stored in there. We also saw, and we'll see a little bit more detail when I import the field book, we'll actually have figures, and then we'll also see that the survey points themselves are in that database. So, so good job on that one. All right, so let's come back now into our program here. I am going to come in here. I'm going to clean up my drawing. I'm going to remove all these points from my drawing, so I'll get rid of those, clean out my drawing file. They're still in the database, so I haven't lost them. I just want to clean up this drawing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this database, and I'm going to make a new one, and we're going to say, I'm going to just call it Trimble Link Demo. Not a great name, but it's something we need to work on in processes here and what the workflows are. And I'm going to come into my database settings, and I'm just going to import my settings file to make sure I have my settings set the way I want for this database. Okay, so again, I have mainly no datum, no projection, and US foot is really what I'm verifying here. All right. I can create a network, or I can use Trimble Link to create a network. So I typically like to be a little proactive on these, so I'm going to come in and make a new network, and I'm going to do FT. Oh, and maybe today's date, 02/24, and this is the DV parking area. This is actually the survey we did a couple of years ago in training at the Denver office, and there we go. So we'll bring that in. Try to put some good data in here. All right, so again, we have no data in this. Not a whole lot more I need to do, but we can leave it like that. I could set some predefined points or import some ASCII files if I need to have some point data that my observation data requires. But the observation database I have, or not, excuse me, the fieldbook file I'm bringing in has all the data it needs contained within it. All right, to get to this now, we're going to go to the Trimble pull-down menu, and it's very similar to what we had in 2007 in Land Desktop. Got a little bit more advanced settings as the Trimble data collectors now have their synchronizer software. If you're using that application, this will interface with that directly. Unfortunately for today, I don't have a data collector to work with, so I am using a data card that I've configured one of my folders to be a virtual data card, so I'm going to import my data off of that. But a couple of things, if you're using the geoid models, we can use this to install a geoid model into our software. We have all of this outlined in the Field to Office training handout, and it's very similar to what we've done in Land Desktop. So I'm going to come in, and I want to use the second command on the menu here. We're going to import the job. And we'll go ahead and click on that. You get these nice little did you know tooltips, and at some point you can turn that off so you don't see those. We'll close that down, and first command is going to be, or the first window is, where is my data collector? So I either have it connected through a COM port, or we're using the active sync functionality to connect directly to our data collector. I have created a data card, and you can do that by using this Create New Device button here, and then you can give your card a name, and then you browse to and select the folder on your server that you're going to be importing these files from. So I've actually mapped this to the survey folder of my project that I'm currently working on. So I'll go ahead and select that. And we'll open that up, and that'll take me to my data card, so to speak. And I come in here, and I've got my files here in my field data folder. And I've got quite a few job files here. And the one I'm working with today is this one called OfficeNet. I'm not sure what that name means, but we can see I've got several job files in here. But we'll go ahead and open that. It's going to process that, download it. I do get this warning saying, hey, I don't have a coordinate system in my current project that matches the coordinate system I use in the data collector. And for now, it's not a big deal because I am using a local ground coordinate system. Uploading data, you may get the same error message, but in the Trimble data collectors, you can assign your coordinate systems to your job files in the data collector, which is obviously something you're going to need to be able to stake out in the field. All right, so I'm going to say, yeah, I'll go ahead and continue with download. We get this check-in screen where I can see all of the different points and data that was observed. So we can see I've got some points that were set by northern easting elevation. I do want to point out that I do have some point names that don't have point numbers on here. So if you want to go more to a typical land desktop point database functionality, we need to convert these point names to point numbers. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So there's a button over here to renumber, and unfortunately this renumbers everything. I can't just say go do the points that have descriptors here, you know, because unfortunately there is no such thing as an invalid point in Civil 3D. So I'm going to start with point number 1000. We'll pick OK to that. It will generate this renumber text file that shows you here's the old number, here's the new point number that was assigned. And you can use this to renumber, so if you have any numbering conflicts with existing data. But just thought I'd get that taken care of initially here. And then we'll see now we're setting up our base on point 1000. Not that we're doing it. This is all GPS data, excuse me, couldn't think of what I wanted there. But we will see that we are taking some top of curb shots. We've got our figure commands in here, so B space TC1 will begin a figure on TC1. We got a C3, we'll do a 3-point curve through those 3 points. A couple other ones come down, we do another, did a note, we're going to begin top of curve 2. And we kind of work our way through here and just see, you know, all these are RTK shots. And we have then points, you know, we're doing C3s for curves, we're doing B to begin figures, and so on. So we do have our figure commands, and hopefully everybody recognizes the feature codes themselves as standard Nolte field codes. All right, so we're ready to go. Options on here, just click real quickly here. We do want to have match figure name with point description turned on. That way when it creates the field book file, it will automatically add in the end and continue statements when our feature code changes to a different figure. So you can see we've only got the begin figure commands, we've got the C3 commands, but we don't have any end or continue commands in here. So you have to have that turned on in order for that the fieldbook file to have in the appropriate descriptions. And typically we leave this turned off. This supports a legacy problem that they had. It was like in version 14 of Sofdesk where they accidentally removed the point description when they wrote the figure command. So what we would do in those olden days is we'd actually double code the feature code. So we'd have B space figure name space point code. All right, but we're not using that, so you want to make sure that one's off, that one's match figures is on. All right, so I'll pick OK to that. It will now process that, and it's going to generate a fieldbook file, but we get a little bit more robust dialog than we did in Land Desktop. Land Desktop, you got a fieldbook file, you got to import that. Civil 3D, now we need to tell it which databases we're going to use. So we can see here's the 2 databases I created. I want to select my Trimble link one, and then it shows me if I have add to an existing network turned on, I can pick that network I've already created. Or if I want, I can create a network on the fly. And you see by default, it's going to want to name it after your field book, but we can come in here and edit this and type in whatever we want. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead. I took the time to create my network ahead of time, so I'm going to say add it to that existing network. As we bring it in, we can have it wipe that network clean. So I can say delete all the observations, the network points, and the figures from that. So you got to watch using those options if you've already downloaded field data into that network. So if you are bringing multiple field book files into the same network, you want to make sure those 3 toggles are cleared. All right. Network storage. Do you want to add the network object itself to the drawing? I see no need for these. It creates that little spider web drawing or diagram showing where your base point is and the lines out to all the side shots, so to speak, or all the observed points. I don't need to see that in my drawing file. We can import that later. Same thing with points and figures. You can either bring them in now or you can do it after you've generated the data into your network, and we saw that I could delete points. We can also add points. All right, equipment database, I'm not doing any adjustments or anything, so I'll just leave these on the sample equipment databases. And then the figure prefix database, we've only got the nullity one here, but I want to make sure that that one is selected so my figures are drawn on the correct layers. So everything looks good. I will click OK. This is significantly slower than the process of bringing it into Land Desktop. Land Desktop did two things. It created a fieldbook file. It imported the fieldbook file. In Civil 3D, it's going through and doing those two steps, but as it brings it in, it also adds all of that data to the different tables in that observation database or in that network database. All right, so once we're done, we'll pick OK, and we've got our data. All right, there's my one control point is, oh, I got rid of that one. All right, so we've got our point data here. We've got a few control points that we don't need to see, but we brought it in, and for some reason, I don't see figures. I had that turned on, didn't I? Let me check layers real quick. Okay, so let me look at my network here. And I, for some reason, did get figures, so we'll have to do a little sluicing here. So let me. And now my command's not working. All right, that's nice. Let me do this. Right-click, refresh. Actually, I'm going to close it and then open it again. Sometimes these are, there we go. I hope that'll get it now. All right, I hate when it doesn't work because I've got points. All right, well, I hate when it works 100 times in demo. I'm going to come in here and let me edit the field book and let me see what's going on here. So we're going to come, I right-clicked on the network, and that's where you're going to get your edit field book command. So you can see we've got edit and import right there together. So let me come in and edit my field book. And it should put the field book, and it's got the old path, but it should put it in the same folder as our survey database. So let me come into my project folder here. And those survey databases are in the Civil 3D. We're coming into here. There's our download, and there's the fieldbook file. So if you look at the full path here, it's going to come down into the Civil 3D. There is the database name. There is the network name. And in that folder is my fieldbook file. All right, so we'll open that up. All right, so I do have figure commands. All right, so that looks good. So let me go ahead and close that down. Let me import this again. So I'm going to say import fieldbook, grab that one, and we'll do OK. So let me see. I don't really need the graphics, but erase points, reset network, delete figures. I don't want the network object. All right, so we will go ahead and pick OK to that. Okay. That time it works. I'm not sure why it didn't go the first time. All right, so that time just by re-importing it, I am getting my figures drawn correctly now, and if I look at my data files here, so now it's updating correctly. So I wasn't quite sure what I clicked in the Trimble link import job dialog there. I must have clicked something that I wasn't aware of, but we bring that field book in. This is what we should see. So we have our 3 control points, no non-control points, and then we'll see in our setups, even though this is GPS data, we can edit the setup. But if we go into observations, that will then allow you to see here's all the shots, and there's the angles, distance relative to the base point. And this is all done because we created that field book file from this data. Then we'll also see, if I expand here, I do get down to all my figures. All right, and if I click on this, you get a little thumbnail of the figure. I can also say, well, zoom to show me where that figure is in my drawing. So I can, as I click on these, they will highlight so you can see which one it is that I'm working on. So there's the retaining wall, and there's the sidewalk. All right. Looking at this, I do see there's a small problem here with this one figure. It's supposed to be curved, so that tells me I need to make some edits to that. All right, so let me take a look at that field book again. So again, I'm going to right-click on the network, and I'm going to edit field book, and hopefully this time it remembered where I was. So what I'm going to do is I want to scroll down and kind of see if I can figure out what's going on here, and I can see it's right here is my TC2. For some reason we began the figure, but then we went and took another top of curve shot on TC1. It added in this continue command. So there's our problem. So let me get rid of the continue, and then we'll cut that one out of there, and that goes right in front there. And I don't need to continue this one either. So we just got a little out of sequence when we began the figure, but then we took another shot back on the first top of curve. And I'll go ahead and clean that up a bit. So what we want to see here is we've continued TC1, take a bunch of TC1 shots. We have a C3 here. Then we began our TC2 figure. We start a multi-point curve. We take a whole bunch of shots along that, and then we end the multi-point curve. So MCS is multi-point curve start, MCE is multi-point curve end. So let's go ahead and save those changes, and then again, I right-click and import field book. Pick OK to that. Definitely want to erase all my points and figures, re-import those, yes, and we'll bring that back in. And I apologize for zooming extents on us here, but we'll see now this figure comes in as a nice curved segment. If we look at the layer name, while I have that selected, you see it is using the EXPN TC layer, so our figure prefix library is working correctly to where if I go to Standards Manager, I can reset color line type fairly quickly here, and I'll do that on my current drawing, and it's going to check all of my layers, and we'll use the Civil Engineering library or discipline, so I'll get my screened colors, and we should see everything comes in. Hopefully, there we go. So I got them all in. This field book file now, if you're done with this process, that field book file is ready to go. It will import into Land Desktop, and if you're using the standard Nolte description key and figure prefix libraries in Land Desktop, you should get almost an identical picture in Land Desktop. All right, let me switch over back to the old PowerPoint here. And I missed, hang on a second. Try that one, there we go. All right, so what we saw, and hopefully this is enough for those of you who actually need to start working with this next week to import your Trimble data and generate that field book file. Hopefully we got to the point where we are comfortable enough with Civil 3D between the last presentation where I did the points and the description keys to where we saw how to bring this in to using the Trimble link, and hopefully that's very similar to Land Desktop. And then we also saw that the field book file that was created is identical to the field book in Land Desktop, which brings up the last poll question, which I'll go ahead and ask right now. But hopefully everybody get this one correct because I just said it out loud. And the goal is just want to make sure that you are aware that a Civil 3D field book file can be imported into Land Desktop. So hopefully everybody has got that one answered. Some of those you guys with the false there need to change that to true. So that is true. All right, the field book file from Civil 3D is identical to the field book file in Land Desktop. All right, so we'll close that and show it. Even though I just told you that is true, somebody still insisted on picking false there. Hopefully you call me and I can help you out in the future here as we work on this. All right, I'm at 55 minutes on today's presentation. There were not any questions that I saw. That's fine. If you do have questions, feel free to email me or call me. I am available most of next week. That if you want to start working on this, either this week or next week, I'd be more than willing to do a sharing your desktop and can help you guys out with the first one or two that you bring in to make sure that we get this done correctly. All right, with that, since I have no questions, I'd like to thank you for attending today's session. Hopefully you did learn a few things about Civil 3D. There will be a small survey just asking how I did and what topics, how the topics were and what else you'd like to see. I hope you do take the time to complete that. Thank you, and I hope the rest of your day is fruitful. Thanks.